You know, I was going to start off this review by doing a bit of a sing and dance routine, but after watching this movie, I don't really have the energy. So Stan and Ollie stars John C. Reily and Steve Coogan as the comedy duo Laurel and Hardy, and this movie shows their lives and how they got to the point they were when they retired in the very late 50s, and we get to see their journey, all of the trials and tribulations that they went through in order to become the most infamous comedy duo the world has ever seen. So I'll start off with Steve Coogan. I thought Steve Coogan was excellent in this movie. I'm a big fan of Steve Coogan, obviously, you know, as a British citizen and him being a British comedian. I'm very much well tracked in terms of Steve Coogan's comedy career, and I very much enjoyed what he brought to the table here. He was not only very amusing, but also very charming as well. I found him to be a very good adversary to this movie, and I think he really brought a lot of charisma, but also a lot of edge to the role, which I really appreciated. I think he was a really good casting choice for Mr. Stan Laurel. And then knocking it out of the park as maybe his greatest performance yet is John C. Reily as Oliver Hardy. I thought he was brilliant in this movie. Like I say, maybe the best performance of his career. I'm still waiting to see a couple other movies, like we've still got the Sisters Brothers to come out next year, which I'm very excited about. But as far as what I've seen so far, I think Stan and Ollie could be his best performance. I think he was very sweet in this movie, very heartfelt, and also just very, very real. I really brought into Oliver Hardy specifically as a character, and that was mostly due to John C. Reily. I'm going to be interested to see what the play is with this movie when it comes to the Oscars. I'm going to see whether, you know, who's going to go for lead and who's going to go for supporting, because arguably you could say that they are both leads in this movie, and obviously that's the way it's marketed. But I would honestly say, I think John C. Reily does take the lead here. I think the movie focuses a bit more on him than it does on Steve Coogan's Stan Laurel. I think it'd be interesting if we actually get to see that John C. Reily maybe gets nominated for Best Lead Actor, and then Steve Coogan gets nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I think that'd be interesting if that happens, if we see that actually come to fruition, because although the movie's marketed as two leads, I think John C. Reily takes the push just a little bit. Now, while the performances in this movie across the board are great, I do think this movie is kind of emotionally void. And what I mean by that is this movie just doesn't really have much beneath the surface. This movie really wants to delve into the backstory and the history of Laurel and Hardy, but in the end, it doesn't really do that. It kind of just, you know, spins its wheels, and it doesn't really actually show much emotion. I mean, there's one scene in particular that you would have seen in the trailer where they do have a bit of a falling out, and you see that, but it's not really gone into that much, and you don't feel much. This movie doesn't really make you feel particularly sad or emotional, but it doesn't really make you feel particularly happy or uplifted either. It might do for some people. I know a lot of people have said they really, you know, had a tear in their eye in the last scene of the movie. I personally didn't, and I think all of the emotional beats and all of the, you know, whether I'm talking emotional as in actual sad or happy moments, I feel like the movie kind of came across flat to me and kind of hollow. Also, I think the second half of this movie just significantly slows down. I was kind of enjoying the first half, but then the second half, for me, the pacing began to suffer, and I kind of felt like this movie was just dragging on a bit. This movie has a pretty short runtime, and I'm quite happy with that, because if the movie would have kept going, I would have been like, okay, this is just dragging it out way too much. And I don't know if that's down to the pacing itself, or if that's down to the fact that the movie doesn't really have a 3-act structure. It's more a 2-act structure. You have the first half with Oliver and Hardy, and then you have the second half where they've broken up, sort of thing. And then you do kind of have a 3rd act, but the 3rd act is basically 5 minutes of the movie, so it's not really a 3rd act. So I don't know what's going on, if it's the pacing or if it's the structure of the movie. It's quite hard to tell, but overall, the second half of the movie just completely flatlined. Overall, I did enjoy parts of Stan and Ollie. I think there are great parts in this movie. I think the performances are fantastic. Like I say, maybe John C. Reily's greatest performance of his career. But I genuinely believe that this movie was trying to go for so much more, and it failed on those other elements. It just didn't work on an emotional level for me. It didn't work on a grandeur level. And I feel like the movie just feels very hollow inside. It feels like this movie has so much that it wants to tackle, but it has nothing beneath the surface, and therefore doesn't have the power to actually invest into these storylines. And I feel like overall the movie just completely fell flat. So did you guys see Stan and Ollie? If you did, make sure you tell me all your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let's have a conversation about this movie in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, if you want to see more movie reviews from me, be sure to subscribe. And I hope to see you guys again in my next video.